What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Draft Hub. And today we are going to continue with my preseason 2025 conference predictions for college football. And today we have landed on the American Athletic Conference, the AAC. Now, I'm super excited about this video, twofold. One, because we are coming to the end, sort of kind of the group of six conferences, and then we are going to start moving into the Power Four. So I'm really, really excited about that. After this one, we're going to do the Big 12, and then we are going to move into the P4 conferences. So I'm really, really excited about that. And two, this is a cool conference. Not only I tweeted it out. I know I only have like 40 followers on X, but I tweeted it out the other day, and I said the American Athletic Conference probably has the best logos throughout the entire conference. So I'm super excited to talk about those as well. But yeah, I'm excited to talk about this conference. It's super top heavy to me, in my opinion. So we're going to go through it. I really think that there are six legitimate teams that could win this conference this year. So we're going to take a look at my predictions and my opinions. But before we get into that, please, if you enjoy videos like this, any college football videos, any NFL videos, any NFL draft videos, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. We are moving right along with our subscriptions. We're up to, at the time of recording, 213, which is way more than I thought, especially since I started this channel in the off season. So I can't thank you guys enough for your continued support. And let's get into this video. All right, so kicking us off in the basement of the AAC, we have the Tulsa Golden Hurricane with a record prediction of 2-10. By the way, I say this all the time in these videos that I'm going to rank these logos or I'm going to rate these logos, and I get through like 2 or 3 and then I just completely forget to do more of them. So I'm going to say I like this Tulsa logo. I think it's classic. I love the flags in the background. I'm going to give it like a 7.5 out of 10. I think it could use a little bit of a touch up, but this whole program can use a little bit of a touch up. So Trey Lamb is coming in. He was the head coach of East Tennessee last year. He's 35 years old. So with Tulsa, they have been pretty terrible the last few years. Last year, they were really, really bad, giving up 48.5 points per game in AAC conference games. That is not great. So, they have a piece or two. They have Kirk Francis on offense, who showed some signs last year. They don't really have too much to go around, though, to be honest with you. So having a 35-year-old head coach from the FCS level to come up to the FBS level, I think is a great effort in long-term rebuilding. You got a young, gung-ho head coach, so let's see how that takes him there. But yeah, speaking about the defense, 7.9 yards per game last year, 48.5 points per game in AAC play. That is unbelievable, but they're only returning 3 starters. Normally, I would not grade only returning 3 starters, but starters last year gave up that many points. Maybe players in it will do better. We'll do much better for you, or we'll at least do something. But on the offensive side, Sevion Morrison, they have Michael Tees coming in, transfers from Kansas State and Texas A&M. They have a couple decent transfer players here, but there's really not too much to work with for Trey Lamb in his first year here. I think it's going to be another down year, but through overall player development, through transfers, hopefully that they can end recruiting just altogether. I hope that Trey Lamb could kind of build this Tulsa program back up from the ground, because there's really no other direction to go from right now than up. At number 13, I have the UAB Blazers here with my favorite logo in the FBS. I think this is a 10 out of 10 logo. I just absolutely love this logo. It's fierce, it's cool, it's colorful. The tealish green, just a color that you don't see too often, but I really do enjoy this logo. But unfortunately, that's about as good as it gets for the UAB Blazers and Trent Dilfer. He's 7-17 over his last couple seasons since taking over this program. But I think this is the swan song for Dilfer here, and it's not necessarily his fault. Offensively, last year, they weren't too bad, averaging 27.1 points per game. Jalen Kitna comes back, who had just over 2,000 yards and 17 touchdowns last year, but he's basically their only returning impact starter on offense. They're facing a full rebuild across the board on the offensive side and the defensive side as well. The defensive side, they let up 38 points per game, so obviously that spells disaster. If you're giving up 11 points per game more than you are scoring, I don't need to tell you that. That's basic math. But yeah, they did dip into the transfer portal quite a bit, especially on the defensive side. Denver Warren, Nigel Tate, Perry Fisher are some impact players that transferred from other big time FBS colleges, but really, I just don't think it's going to be able to match up. Really, uh, eh, yeah, I mean, for these few bottom teams here, there's really not much other to say than they're really bad defensively and they're going through a full scale rebuild. So I think Dilfer is out after this year, and I think UAB is going to have to build from the ground up yet again. But yeah, they were just decimated by transfers and by graduation this year. But Kitna is nice. I think if there's any respite for this offense, if there's anyone that could at least provide some flashy plays, it's going to be Kitna. So at least they have some sort of a playmaker at the quarterback position, but really there's just no talent on any other facet of this roster than really quarterback. At number 12, I have the Charlotte 49ers. Now, the 49ers made a really, really big head coaching appointment this offseason. That was with Tim Albin. Tim Albin just recently won the MAC championship with Ohio. Then he jumped ship. They must have paid him a boatload of money because Ohio still has a very talented program, and he left them to come to Charlotte. This team is just, they haven't really found any success at the FBS level. They have been at the FBS level. This will now be a decade that they came up from the FCS, and I just can't see them finding really any success yet. They made a great head coaching hire, and I think that he will lead them eventually in the right direction. But again, void of talent is this roster. You have two transfer quarterbacks and Grayson Loftus and Connor Harrell that will duke it out for the starting spot. Right away, having no solidified answer at this point in the offseason at your quarterback position kind of spells disaster. They're facing a complete overhaul of the wide receiver position. On the defensive side, Nate Fannis is a good hire for them. So he only has one returning starter, but a couple of key contributors will be coming back. Reed Wilford is a player that I think is going to break out in a big way this year for him. I think Grayson Loftus does win the quarterback competition, and I think he makes some sort of impact. Like I said, I feel bad kind of not really having too much to say about these bottom teams here, but really it's just a lot of the same. I feel like I'm saying verbatim what I'm saying for every other team. It's just a lot of uncertainty on the offensive side, no talent on the defensive side, and they're going to have to rebuild from the bottom up. But I do think Charlotte has a bright future with Tim Albin at the helm. So hopefully he could kind of lay the groundwork this year, and then he could build upon it next year and the years after that. And at number 11, I have the Temple Owls here. Now, all right, I just realized that I didn't say anything about the Charlotte 49ers logo. I like the middle of the C, but it's pretty bland, to be honest with you. I'll give it a 5 out of 10. This is the old Temple Owls logo, and a lot of people tell me that, oh, you have no idea what you're talking about because you're using old logos. So real quick, let me just stand on my soapbox before we continue this here. I like to use retro logos. I will use current logos. I will use fan art logos. Whatever logo I like is the logo that I'm going to use. And if you wanted me to put a bland ass T in the middle of this slide, then I would have done it. But this is a way better logo than what Temple has now. So that's just my little spiel there. I will use whatever logo I want. If you don't think that I know the logo, then I don't know. Go watch a different channel. I don't know what to tell you. But the Temple Owls are one of the more boring teams in the AAC over the fact that they only scored 19 points per game last year, which was the bottom in the AAC, but they only gave up 25 points per game. So really not terrible. I think that was middle of the pack, or at least towards the top of the AAC in terms of points per game given up. This team just lacks a lot of firepower. Hiring KC Keeler, which I realize I have KC Keelers here. No, it's KC Keeler from Sam Houston State is big because that team very much exceeded expectations last year in Conference USA, and I think they're going to do the same again this year. They have a fantastic groundwork, but Keeler is also 65 years old, so really not the type of coach that's probably going to be around long-term to rebuild. So I think that he is in a win now, or at least get better now, but I just don't think they have the talent. And full transparency here for the breakout candidate, I only put John Adams here because that's just hilarious that he's the second president of the United States and he's playing wide receiver for the Temple Owls. It's gotten so bad for the Temple Owls that they had to dig up the grave of John Adams to play wide receiver for them. But Javier Morton is a player that I like quite a bit. They had a couple of players last year in the secondary that did move on that actually were pretty good. Andres Keaton was a player that I liked quite a bit last year that moved on to the NFL. I believe he signed with the Atlanta Falcons. I could be wrong on that as an undrafted free agent, but he was really good. They have produced some NFL talent, but Evan Simon is a player that I'm very very hot and cold on. I think Keeler is going to do a good job. This is really more of a floor for the Temple Owls at 3-9. I think they could potentially go 5-7, maybe even 6-6, depending on how Evan Simon kind of performs and how this offense kind of gets better from last year. But they do have a couple transfers coming in at running back, at wide receiver. Hopefully they can make an impact. But again, I just think this team just, at least for challenging for a bowl spot now, I feel like they lack some real talent. That Temple logo for me was an 8 out of 10, by the way. Now we move on to number 10. I have the Rice Owls here. This kind of kicks off, maybe a little bit of a spoiler. The next 3 spots are all Owls, which I think is pretty hilarious. But the Rice Owls, oh no, sorry. This is the second of 3. I don't even know what I'm talking about. Rice Owl at number 10. It's pretty plain. Even see it. I picked this bet for this one, but Owls, a 10. It's pretty mid, to be honest with you. There's not a problem with it. I just don't think it's that great. But I had them at a record prediction of 4-8, maybe a little bit higher than some people would initially have them. But don't forget that this Rice Owls defense last year was the number 1 defense in yards per play with 5.04 yards per play last year they gave up. Now, I know they lost standout safety Gabriel Taylor, but I think Davion Hook is a really, really good player. They promoted their linebacker coach, John Kay, to defensive coordinator. So you're kind of keeping things in-house. You're keeping the same philosophy. They only returned 3 starters, but I think this defense is still going to be pretty good for this conference. It's really, for Scott Abell, it's really going to be in terms of an offensive transition or an offensive philosophy transition. They're bringing in a ton of transfers in terms of quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs. So I think they're really going to prioritize the offense this year because last year, like I said, the defense was pretty good for what this team is. For what this team is, because Rice is historically just not a good program at the FBS level. But they were able to produce really good defensively, but just offensively, they were completely inept. Hopefully there is a philosophy change this year on the offensive side. Some of the guys that they brought in, Quentin Jackson, Max Balthauser, they brought in, they need to find a quarterback still for the most part. Rayshawn McNeil is a player that I like quite a bit. I think in terms of just overall quarterback stability, offensive production is really going to hinder this team. I think defensively, they still have the talent, even though they're only bringing back 3 starters. Offensively, they just got to kind of find a couple of transfers or a couple of regular recruits that, kind of fit this build. But Abell isn't getting any younger. He's 55 years old. I think they're going to start turning a corner, or at least they started last year for the most part, at least on the defensive side. But it's going to be interesting to see how the Owls do this year. I feel like this is a happy medium where they could go 5-7. They could probably go 2-10. The schedule is relatively easy for them, so I could see a couple more wins in there. But for now, I have them at 4-8. At number 9, I have the Florida Atlantic Owls. Now, this is a team that could do a lot better than this prediction. Their success hinders on their defense because they gave up 6.1 yards per game last year, 6.1 yards per play. Sorry. God, 6.1 yards per game would be absolutely unbelievable. That would be the greatest defense in the history of football. No, 6.1 yards per play they gave up. I'm recording this very early in the morning. I'm sorry if I keep getting things wrong, but it's about 7:15 in the morning that I'm recording this. But yes, their defense was not good last year, and they also have 0 returning starters. So you're just kind of putting out a bunch of players that have really no game time whatsoever. Not too many transfers on the defensive side either. Brett Dewhurst he's the new defensive coordinator, is really going to have he has his work cut out for him 100%. This is going to be a work in progress on the defensive side. But on the offensive side, you have Zach Kitley, who's coming in. You have Caden Veltkamp, and you have Easton Messer, who all came in as Western Kentucky transfers. They hired Kitley from Western Kentucky. He led one of the more exciting offenses in the FBS the last few years. But Veltkamp, I mean, this is basically just Western Kentucky Hilltoppers 2.0 here, but that unit averaged 25.9 points per game last year. I do think Veltkamp and Messer are really going to give them the shot of adrenaline they need, at least on the offensive side of the ball. But I can't help but think that a 2-game improvement from last year. They went 3-9 last year. I have them at 5-7, and it's purely offensively. I think this team is going to be atrocious defensively, and that's really where this is the ceiling. The Florida Atlantic Owls are 5-7 is probably generous, on the cusp of a bowl. That's generous. I mean, 5-7 for this team, but yeah, I think this is a case of a team having a tremendous amount of offensive talent, but really the defense is just where that's their Achilles heel, 100% going into this season. At number 8, I have the North Texas Mean Green. By the way, the Florida Atlantic Owls logo was a 7 out of 10 for me. I love this logo. I like the clean look of it. I'm going to give it a 6.5 out of 10. Just a little plain, but it is clean. 7-5, I have the North Texas Mean Green here. A 1-game improvement, I believe, on last year. Last year, they had one of the best scoring offenses in the AAC with 33.2 points per game, but also surrendered 34.2 points per game. So Eric Morris took a step in the right direction by hiring Skylar Cassidy from Sam Houston State, which last year, Sam Houston State defensively were fantastic, so that is a wonderful get for them. He also brought in a ton of transfers on the defensive side. They only returned 3 starters on defense, but Evan Jackson is one of the more exciting safeties in college football, in my opinion, and he is going to lead this defense 100%. Mackenzie McGill, Miles Coleman, these are guys. Miles Coleman, 5'7", by the way, like 155 pounds, but he is lightning in a bottle. They did lose Chandler Morris. A couple transfers came in. I don't know off the top of my head who is going to be the leader of this offense, but I do think Eric Morris leads a wide open type of offense. The offensive playmakers are there. I think as long as Skylar Cassidy can clean up on the defensive side, you're looking at a team that is obviously going to make an improvement from last year. Like I said, I think they went 6-6 last year. No, I'm sorry. They had a losing season last year. I am sorry. I do apologize. Yes, they had a losing season last year, but I think hiring Cassidy and basically having the same offensive firepower as last year, minus Chandler Morris at the quarterback position, I do think this team is going to take a step in the right direction, and I do think they will make a bowl this year. At number 7, I have the East Carolina Pirates with a record prediction of 7-5. Again, one of my favorite logos in all of college football. To me, this is a 9.5, very, very close to a 10 out of 10. I love the logo, love the fierceness, love the cleanliness of it, love the colors. This is one of my favorite logos in the FBS as well. But Blake Harrell's appointment last year, this team was dead in the water. They started off 2-4, and they finished with a 6-1 finish, including a bowl game over NC State in the Military Bowl. They won their bowl game as well. So it turned out to be a fabulous season for Blake Harrell. He obviously got promoted to the full-time head coach after such a successful interim stint. But yeah, I think this team offensively has a ton of weapons. They have Caden Hauser, who last year, 2,000 yards, 18 touchdowns. I think that this team offensively is going to be okay. Anthony Smith is a really, really good wide receiver as well. But I think defensively is where we're going to see the biggest change, because Harrell is now the full-time head coach. So he handed over the defensive calling duties to Josh Aldridge, who is a former Auburn and Liberty assistant. They only have 2 starters on the defensive side coming back. They have holes all over the place, but it's going to be interesting to see how Aldridge gets the most out of this defensive unit, because this team can score. And I do think that is what's going to propel them again, because I don't really see a big time improvement record wise from this team, just based on the fact that they defensively, they just have so many holes. I mean, it's tough to get better when you're losing so many players. But offensively, I think this is going to be a very, very exciting unit. There's a lot to look forward to in East Carolina, and I think that they are bowl bound yet again. Rounding out the top six here, I have the USF Bulls, which is another very clean logo. I like it quite a bit. A 7 out of 10 for me. I have them at a record prediction at 7-5. Now, this is a team that could very, very much exceed expectations. Really more of a floor for them. Just the loss of their top three last year. They are getting Byron very healthy. I'm excited. They were big time expectations on this team last year. He did get injured. This team kind of fell flat on their face. They have one of the AAC's top offensive lines. They have Keyshawn Singleton as well, who is an absolute stud at the wide receiver position. Defensively, not great. They averaged about 30 points per game given up and about 5.8 yards per snap last year. They did lose Bernard Gooden to the transfer portal in the spring. They are returning 6 starters, though. So this team is very potent. This is a very, I feel like if they catch fire early on, it's going to propel them to a potential 9-3 record, and they're going to be fighting for the conference championship game. But I do think with not many upgrades made on the defensive side, losing Gooden was such a huge loss for them. They are bringing back Mac Harris and Jalen Schuler, who are 2 stud linebackers. So they can anchor the defense. This is just a very up in the air team for me. That's really what my issue is. I don't exactly know which way that they're going to go. So I have them at kind of like a safe prediction of a floor of 7-5, but I could easily see this team going 8-4, 9-3, and fighting for a conference championship appearance. Because overall, like I said earlier in the video, these top 6 teams really could all potentially win the conference. So Byron Brown is he's such an X factor. He's such an outlier. He is a stud, probably one of the best quarterbacks in the conference, if I would say. So as long as he can stay healthy and he can get back to playing his best football and this defense could hold, I think you're looking at maybe an 8-9 win team here. At number 5, I have the UTSA Roadrunners, who have one of my favorite logos. I've said that 3 times already in the FBS, but I love this logo. This is going to be an 8 out of 10 for me. I have them at a record prediction at 8-4. Now, Jeff Traylor is going to have one of the top offenses in the group of 5, group of 6, whatever you want to call it. Owen McCown. He's got Robert Henry. He has one of the best receiving cores in the entire FBS. This is going to be an exciting offense. There's no doubt about it. Owen McCown coming back. He is their X factor. Threw for 3,423 yards, 25 touchdowns. I think he's really going to boost his draft stock this year for the Roadrunners. It's the defense that's the problem. They are returning 0 starters from last year. They're losing massive players. Jamori Robinson, 17 tackles for a loss last year. Martavius French, 17 tackles for a loss. They anchored the defensive line. Those 2 guys are both gone. They were the biggest parts of this defense. It's going to be tough. It really is. They brought in a couple of Power 4 players. Shad Banks, Kendrick Blackshire are 2 players that they brought in that I think could make some impact. But again, I think this team is good. It's going to be explosive. This is going to be a fun team to watch. It's just the defense that I think is going to kill them. This team also could be fighting for a spot in the conference championship game. I think Vic Shaw is a really good player that's going to step into a starting role last year. 4.5 sacks for them last year in a rotational role. He's an exciting player, but really the success of this team hinders on the defense, and I can't see this team. They do have a pretty tough schedule for the most part too. So 8-4 could be generous, especially with the defense that they are going to put on the field. But hopefully the defense can make a quick transition and gel quickly and become a fairly decent unit, because this team is super exciting. And I would hate to see them be at the bottom of the AAC because of how exciting their offense is. At number 4, I have the Army Black Knights here. Don't know why this came out in green. I did not put it in green, but be that as it may, whatever. You probably can't find a better way to debut into a conference than the Army Black Knights did last year. They were unbelievable. They were 11-1 last year and won the AAC. Yeah, I know. That's why it's tough having them at 4. But yeah, they won the AAC with a 35-14 domination over John Summerall's Tulane team. I had them at 8-4. And really the reason why is Bryson Daly is gone. Dwayne Coleman is going to take over the starting spot for the Army Black Knights here. They had the best defense in the AAC last year, but they lost a lot of players. A solid foundation they do bring back, but they lost a couple players to the transfer portal, and Jaden Mays was in the transfer portal from quite a bit, and then he withdrew. So it's very interesting to see. Yeah, it's almost like with was it Army? Was Kanye Udo on Army? I believe he was. He transferred to Arizona State, which I think is hilarious too. But Kanye Udo did transfer out as well. This is a team that is just always going to be pretty good. I mean, that's just how it is. They're always going to be pretty good. Jeff Munkin is going to do a tremendous job with this team. You know, they lost a ton of firepower on the offensive side. I believe Bryson Daly ran for almost 1,700 yards and 32 touchdowns last year. So it's going to be interesting to see how they replace that with Dwayne Coleman. But I think you're going to get more of the same defensively. I just think this offense isn't going to be nearly as explosive as they were last year. And I really think that's going to be the problem for them. Yet replacing 32 rushing touchdowns is going to be a near impossible task for the Army Black Knights. So please just bear with me on that one. But yeah, again, don't know why this came out in green, but I will give the Army Black Knights logo a 6 out of 10. I think it's cool. I wish it was a little different. Maybe not in like a crest, maybe just the helmet and the sword on its own with the star underneath it, kind of like how Navy has the N with the star on the top right. But yeah, I like this logo. I think this team is still going to be good. They're going to be fighting for a spot in the championship game yet again. I just think there's a slight decline in play from last year. Tough to replace what they did, or tough to emulate what they did last year. At 3, I have the Memphis Tigers with a record prediction of 9-3. So initially, I was really low on the Tigers. They are bringing back the 115th returning production metric in the FBS. Not good. This team is coming off of the best 2-year stretch in the program's history of 21 wins. They're replacing one of their best quarterbacks ever in Seth Hennigan. They lost a ton and didn't really replace a whole lot. You have Brendan Lewis and you have A.J. Hill, who is a true freshman, mind you, that are going to be fighting for the starting quarterback spot. So I thought to myself, as I peruse the internet and as I gather some information on my predictions, I realized, wow, a lot of people are higher on the Memphis Tigers than I thought. What am I missing? And then I went to the schedule. And then I saw that the Memphis Tigers are pretty much missing every single difficult opponent in their schedule in 2025. And I said, wow, so if this team even is half as good as they were last year, they're going to win 8 or 9 games. So that's what I have here. Ryan Silverfield has done a fantastic job with this program. I think that he's going to continue to do a fantastic job with this program. I just don't think they have any. This is going to be a facade 9-3 team. I just don't think that they have the talent that will represent their record. I just think that they are better than every other team pretty much on their schedule. Really a cookie cutter schedule for them. That's the reason why I have them this high. If this team is just, like I said, half as good or even 65% as good as they were last year, I think that they're at baseline are going to win 8 games. So I have them at 9-3, but I don't really have them as a real contender for the title game. I just think this team, like I said, they're losing a lot on the defensive side. They're losing a lot on the offensive side. Chandler Martin was one of the more productive linebackers in college football the last 2 years. He is moved on to the Baltimore Ravens now. That is really tough. William Whitlow Jr., though, is a really, really nice player that I think is going to break out in a big way this year. So I'm excited to see how his development goes. So there's a lot of what ifs on this team. But I don't think that there's one thing that's disputable, and that this team has a very easy schedule, and they still have good talent. So I do think that they will win quite a few games. And at number 2, I don't know why it keeps doing this. The Memphis Tigers logo, by the way, is a 6 out of 10. The Navy Midshipmen at number 2 at a record prediction of 10-2. I don't know why For the two armed forces teams, it changed the color to green. For the life of me, I don't know. The Navy logo is pretty bland. It's a 3 out of 10 for me. Brian Newberry led this Navy team on a resurgence last year, a 10-3 record. They beat Air Force, they beat Army, they won the Commander in Chief trophy. They also won their bowl game against Oklahoma in the Armed Forces Bowl, and it was their first postseason victory since 2019. This team, I almost was bold enough to put them as the number one team in the AAC. Almost as bold enough. One factor changed that for me, and we will get into that in a little bit. But having Blake Horvath back, tremendous production. This is a veteran roster. A veteran roster with their wing T attack that, this team is stacked. They are bringing back basically everyone on both sides of the ball. Eli Heidenreich is not only one of my favorite names to say in college football, he's also one of the more exciting white guys in college football, so that's cool too. Like I said, Blake Horvath is awesome. Brian Newberry. This is just a really, really good, solid unit. It's a veteran unit on both sides of the ball. There's no reason to believe why they can't repeat their success last year. Defensively, they were pretty good too. They limited opponents to 22.2 points per game last year. They're bringing in basically, they restocked the secondary. They lost a couple of key linebackers, Colin Ramos and Kyle Jacob, but they brought in PJ Volker, a new defensive coordinator as well. There's no reason to believe why this team can't repeat their success and viably fight for the top spot in the AAC. So don't know why they're green, to be honest with you. But yeah, I think this team is just as strong as they were last year, if not stronger. Horvath, to me, might be crazy, is going to be a sleeper Heisman candidate. That's my bold call for the year for the AAC, is that Blake Horvath is a sleeper Heisman candidate. And this team, potentially, if they win the conference, and maybe to no one's surprise at number one in the AAC, I have the Tulane Greenway John Summerall's team picked up right where Willie Fritz left off. They went 9-5 last year. They lost. They came in first in the AAC. They came in second in the AAC. They lost the conference championship game to Army, who decimated them. But this team is still great. John Summerall is a really, really great coach. Jake Retzlaff was the X factor that made me change my initial prediction of having Navy as the top team in the AAC. Retzlaff is coming in after being basically dishonorably discharged from BYU. A couple allegations there, but he ends up with the Tulane Green Wave, and he is going to start immediately. They did lose Darian Mensah, and that was a huge loss for them. Darian Mensah transferred to Duke. He was a revelation for them last year. It was going to be very tough to repeat that type of productivity from any other quarterback on the roster. But getting Retzlaff very, very late on in the transfer portal, mind you, is such a unbelievable get for them. Sam Howard is one of the best linebackers, one of the best overall defenders in the American Athletic Conference. They are going to go to their fourth straight conference championship game, I'm convinced. This team, this coach, the overall talent, this team is really, really good. They've produced some great talent over the last few years to the NFL as well. So I think they're going to continue that trend as well. This is a very, very powerful team in the group of five or group of six, whatever you want to call it. They are going to fight for the top spot in the group of six. 100%. This team from top to bottom is super talented, very well coached, and I'm excited to see what they do this year. So the 2025-26 American Athletic Conference Championship game will be the Tulane Green Wave against the Navy Midshipmen. The Tulane Green Wave logo, by the way, is a 7.5 out of 10 for me. And I believe that is the first time that I actually finished rating every single logo in a video. I say it every time, and I never do. And I think even though I was kind of late on a lot of them, I wound up doing it. But yes, Tulane versus Navy, and then my winner of the American Athletic Conference in 2025-26 is the Tulane Green Wave. I do think John Summerall gets it done this time. I don't think that they will get decimated by another running armed forces team. Navy, unfortunately, crashes out at 10-3 after the American Athletic Conference championship game. But Tulane wins and becomes a playoff team for the college football playoffs. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. There is my American Athletic Conference predictions for the 2025-26 season. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Thank you guys so much for watching today. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope I see you in the next one.